this project, you're going to need a weight for yarn. You could use as many colors as you want, depending on how colorful you want your bag to be. But I am going with 3. This is a really good scrap yarn project. If you have an awkward amount of yarn in multiple colors, this is a really good way to use that up. So that's what I'm doing with these 2 colors. I have not enough to make something out of each, but enough together. So these 2 are, I believe, Loops and Thread yarn from Michaels, and this one is Red Heart. I've had these in my stash for quite a while, so I don't remember the exact shade names that I'm using. I'll try and find them, and if I can, I'll stick them in the description box. So to get started, we are going to choose the first color that we're working with. I am going to go from light to dark, so this will be my first, this will be my second, and this will be my third color. I'm taking my 5mm crochet hook, and starting with this lightest color, I'm going to begin with a slip knot. Put that on my hook. We are going to start with a chain 4. You could also start with a magic circle if you prefer that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to slip stitch into that very first stitch. So now you see a little circle has formed in the middle there. So now I'm going to chain 3, and this is going to count as our first double crochet of this round. And our chain 3 will always count as the first double crochet. So I've got my circle and my chain 3. I'm going to yarn over, insert into the middle of the circle, pull up a loop. I have 3 loops on my hook, so I'm going to double crochet, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now I'm going to place another double crochet into the middle of the circle. So I have 3 double crochets with that first chain 3 counting as one of them. I'm going to chain 2, and this will be our corner space. Yarn over and place 3 more double crochets into the middle of the circle. So I have 1, 2, 3. So now I have 2 clusters of 3 double crochets separated by the chain 2. Now I'm going to chain 2 and place 3 double crochets into the center of the circle. So I will be placing my third cluster of double crochets, chain 2, 3 more double crochets, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters of double crochets. So I'm going to chain 2, and now we are going to connect it back to the initial chain 3. So I'm going to find the top of the chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to slip stitch into the top. So I just went under, pull through, and pull through. So we're slip stitched together. Now we've got a little square forming with 4 corners and 4 clusters. Now we're going to change colors. So I am going to tie off. If you want to just slip stitch the new color on when you slip stitch to the other side, you can. I just like to tie off between each color. I think it makes it a little bit more secure, especially when you're making something like a bag, but that's totally personal preference. I'm using this tan color for my second color. So to get started, I am going to make a slip knot. I'm going to insert my hook directly into this corner space, not actually going through a stitch, just directly into the space. Put that slip knot on my hook, pull it through, and chain 3. So now we've got that second color attached. Now I'm going to yarn over and make 2 double crochets. So we've got our first cluster of 3 double crochets. Now I'm going to yarn over and go into this next corner space. I'm also going to carry this tail over and hold it against the back of my work to weave it in as I go. So I'm going to yarn over, go through that next space, holding the tail against the back, pull up, and do a cluster of 3 double crochets. So I've got 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then 1 more cluster of 3 double crochets in that same space. So we are making a corner space right now. Now into this next space, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to place a cluster of 3 double crochets. Chain 2, and then 3 double crochets into that same space. So we just created another corner space. I'm going to repeat that in the next space. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So I just placed that corner space, and now we are back to the corner space we started in. So we are going to yarn over and place 3 double crochets into that space. Chain 2. And we are going to place a slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 3. So we just created our second round. I am again going to tie off. So here's our square so far. Now I'm going to go in with my third color and attach the same way. So I'm going to create a slip knot, insert my hook into a corner space, put that slip knot on my hook, pull it through, 1, 2, 3 for our first double crochet, yarn over and place 2 more double crochets. So now we have side spaces. So we are not going to chain, we are just going to yarn over and go directly into that side space and place 3 double crochets in that space. Now yarn over, we're at a corner space, so we're going to do 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets in that same space. So we just created our first corner. And again, when I have tails, I'm just going to be holding them against the back of my work and crochet over them. So yarn over, now we have a side space. So I'm going to go directly into that side space and place 3 double crochets. So we've got our corner space, a side space, and now we're at another corner space. I'm going to yarn over and place our corner stitches. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets in that same space. So I'm going to continue all the way around. So 3 double crochets in the side spaces, 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet in the corner spaces, and I'll meet you back when I get over to that first corner we started in. So I just got to that first corner space. I'm going to place 3 double crochets. chain 2, and then slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 and tie off. So now we have finished our 3rd round. So this is how we're going to continue making our square larger. We are going to keep alternating colors, tying on in corner spaces, placing 3 double crochets without chaining in the side spaces, and in each corner space 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So I am going to keep going around following this pattern until I have 9 rounds. So this is what my finished square will look like. I am going to make 2 more of these, so you should have 3 squares of 9 rounds all together. So I am going to finish off my squares and meet you back here when I have 3 of these finished. I have all 3 of my squares here, all finished. So now we are going to start joining them together to create the shape of our bag. So for the middle and the bottom base of our bag, we are just going to fold a square in half to make this triangular shape. And for the other 2 sides, we're going to do the exact same thing. So just fold the squares in half, and we will match up the edges like this. And this is how we're going to create the shape of our bag. These seams where the squares are touching each other, that is where we are going to be joining them together. So if you were to just lay them flat, which is how I'm going to be laying them when I join them, you are just going to set them up in this formation so that all of the corners are touching in the middle like this. So we are going to join up the sides in order to connect these. I'm going to use a flat slip stitch to join them on either side, but you can use whatever method you're most comfortable with. If you're most comfortable with just whip stitch or mattress stitch or even single crochet, you can use that to join these together. But I prefer a flat slip stitch, so that is the method I'm going to show you today. So zooming in a little bit here so that it is easier to see. So I have my 2 squares lined up next to each other. So for each cluster we have 1, 2, 3 stitches. In each corner space we have 1, 2 stitches on either side. So to get started, we are going to take the color that we want our seam to be. You could use the same color that you ended on for a more seamless look, or you could use a lighter color for more contrast. I'm going to use the darker color. So we're going to start with a slip knot. So I'm making a slip knot, and now I am going to stick that on my hook and tighten it, but I'm going to leave just a little bit of room so it's not extremely tight. Now I'm going to go to the square on my right side. I'm going to find those 2 corner stitches. So there's the first corner stitch and then the second corner stitch. We're going to work into the second corner stitch. So the corner stitch that is closest to this first cluster. So working into that first corner stitch, I'm going into the back loop only. You've got the front and the back loop only. Now I'm going to move the working yarn to be in the middle between the 2 squares. So I've got my working yarn in the middle. Now I'm going to find this second corner stitch on the other side on my left square and go in through the back loop only. So now I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to pull through all 3. So now we're attached. And that is how we're going to join along the rest of the square. So I'll show you a couple more times. So you'll always keep this working yarn between the 2 squares. So again, I'm going to go into the back loop only of the next stitch on the right side. And then the back loop only for the next stitch on the left side. 3 loops on my hook. I'm pulling through all 3. So now we'll go to the next stitch. go through the back loop only. Now find this stitch on the left side, go through the back loop only, and now pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And this is how we are going to continue joining up the rest of our square. So this is how it looks so far. You can see that it's pretty flat and blends in pretty nicely. So I'm going to keep going, and then I'll meet you when we get a little bit closer to the end. So here is how mine is looking so far. So you can see that they are all joined together with that flat slip stitch. So now I have one more space on either side before my corner spaces start. So I've got one space and then my 2 corner spaces. So I am going to go into this first space and do a flat slip stitch to the other side, and then I am going to go into the first corner space and flat slip stitch to the other side, and that is where we're going to stop. So I'm going to place my last flat slip stitch before the corner. Now we're at our corner spaces. So go into that first corner stitch and place our flat slip stitch. And now we're going to stop. So it is fully joined. I'm going to tie off, leaving a tail to be woven in. So now we've got 2 squares joined. So now we are going to join the 3rd square on the other side. So we're going to flat slip stitch up this way, the same way that we did here. So you are going to start with the second corner space on either side, just like we did on the other side. Follow the instructions exactly up until you get to the corner spaces again, flat slip stitch in the first corner space, and then tie off. So the instructions for this side are exactly the same as this side. So I am going to finish that, and then I'll meet you back here when I've got these 3 joined together. I now have all 3 of my squares connected, so it is in this kind of a V shape. So now we're going to flip it over. Fold that first square up. Go to the second square, fold that over. And go to the other square, fold it over. So that is going to be the shape of our bag. So now we are going to join these seams. For this side, I find it a little bit easier to start at the top and go down, so that's what I'm gonna do. The only difference is that we're starting at the top this time. So I'm going to make a slip knot. Stick that on my hook. Starting on the right side, I'm going in through the first corner stitch closest to the cluster. So go in through the right side, put that working yarn in the middle, go in through the first corner stitch on the left side, go in through the back loop only, pull through all 3 loops. And now we're just going to continue exactly like we did on the other side, just flat slip stitching all the way down. I'm getting closer to the end. I have gone all the way down, joining these squares. Now I am getting to my last couple stitches, so I am just going to keep going with flat slip stitch. So I have 1, 2, 3 stitches left. They can get a little bit hard to see closer to the end, especially if you used a dark color like me. So I made it to the end. I'm placing my last flat slip stitch, pulling through the 3 loops on my hook, Now I'm going to tie off, leaving an end long enough to be woven in. Alright, so we just finished joining these two squares. So now you can see they're attached on both sides. So now we're going to fold the square over on the other side and repeat that exact same process, flat slip stitching down the side of these two squares, and then I'll meet you back here. So they should be totally joined on either side. So now it should be closed on the inside. So now that we are done joining our squares, we are going to start on creating our strap. So it doesn't really matter which side you start on. I'm just going to start on the left side. So I am going to turn the square over, and at that point we see that we have our two chain spaces and then our clusters on either side, so it's a corner space. So in these clusters there's 1, 2, 3 stitches, 2 corner stitches, and then 1, 2, 3 stitches on the other cluster. So I'm going to make a slip knot. So there's 1, 2, 3 stitches in this cluster. I'm going to go into stitch number 2. So again, 1, 2, 3 before the corner. 1, 2, I'm going into 2, inserting under both loops. Now I'm going to stick that slip knot on my hook, pull that through, chain 3. Now I'm going to yarn over, go into the next stitch, and place a double crochet. Now in the chain space, I am placing 2 double crochets. I'm just going directly into the corner spaces. Now we have 1, 2, 3 on the other side. I'm going to place a double crochet into the first 2. So 1, 2. So now I have 6 double crochets, chain 3. This will count as your first double crochet. Turn your work. Now we're not going to double crochet into this very first stitch. We're going to start in this next one. And then double crochet into the remaining stitches. And then into the top of that initial chain 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You should always end with 6 double crochets in your row. Chain 3, turn your work. Again, we are skipping the stitch that is directly below our chain 3. So going into the next one, place a double crochet, and we're going to do a double crochet into every stitch until the end. Chain 3, turn, and we are going to keep going back and forth. You should always have 6 double crochets in each row, counting that first chain 3. So I am going to keep going until I am happy with the length of my strap. I will tell you in the next clip how many rows I ended up doing, and I'll meet you back here. I just finished a total of 31 rows to create my strap. So now that the strap is long enough, we are done adding length, and we are going to attach it to the other side. We are going to tie off, and we are going to leave a pretty long tail. We're going to use the tail to attach to the other side. So make sure you leave yourself a pretty long tail. So now we're going to take our needle, So I made sure my strap isn't twisted, and I am aligning the strap with where I'm going to be sewing it on. So I'm putting that long tail through my needle. Now we are going to sew into the same stitches that we made double crochets in on the other side. So we can see in this granny cluster we have 1, 2, 3 stitches. We're going to go into that second stitch. So I'm going to pull my yarn through, and I am just going to go through it one more time and knot it to make it really secure. So now I'm going to go through the next stitch on the strap and then the next stitch in the granny cluster and pull. And I am going to go double on all of them, but I'm not going to knot each time. So into the next stitch of the strap and directly through that chain space, doubling, and I am going to do the same thing on the next one, go directly through that chain space. Since it's a chain 2, we are connecting 2 of the stitches to that space. Now into the next stitch of the strap and into that first stitch of the granny cluster. Now we are at the last stitch of the strap. I'm going to insert my needle and go through that last stitch of the granny cluster. And one more time. Now I'm going to knot it to secure it, and I'm leaving that tail to be woven in at the end. So we now have our strap connected on either side. So now we're going to add a single crochet border all the way around the opening of our bag just to clean it up a little bit. So to get started on that, I am going to go over to the left side here, and I am just going to insert into the middle of this granny cluster. It doesn't really matter which stitch you start with, but I just prefer to start somewhere closer to the middle. So now I'm going to make a slip knot, stick that on my hook, pull through, chain 1, and single crochet back into that same space. And now we are just going to work a single crochet into every space all the way around. So I just got to the strap, and I am going to continue up the side of the strap, placing a single crochet in each stitch. So I'm going to keep going all the way around, and then I will meet you back down here when I get to the other side. So I just got to the end of my strap, and I am now just continuing down the side of the bag and continuing with my single crochets in each stitch. Alright, we are now at that chain space, so I'm just going to go right into that chain space, single crochet, right into the next chain space, single crochet, into the next chain space, single crochet, and then into the next chain space, single crochet. So now I have a couple more stitches before I get to where we started. Alright, I just got back to where we started, So I am going to slip stitch into that single crochet, and I'm going to tie off. If you would like to make a thicker border, you could just keep on going with one more or two more or however many more rows of single crochet you want around the edge of your bag if you want to make a thicker border, but I just wanted a subtle border to kind of clean up the edges, so I'm going to leave it off right here. So tying off, leaving a tail to be woven in. So here is the side that we added a border to. Here is the side that we did not. So I am going to repeat the exact same process that I used to add a border on this side. I'm going to flip it over and repeat that on the other side so that I have a matching border on either side, and then I will meet you back here. So I just finished doing my border on the other side. So now we are completely finished. The last step is just to go around with your darning needle and weave in all of these loose ends. But other than that, we are done. Thank you for watching and enjoy your new bag.